The House of Horrors in the Bronx, a 16-year-old boy with autism starved to death, and now his mother and grandmother are charged with his murder.
Picture this, a third-floor walk-up in the Bronx, flies everywhere, trash piled so high it's covering the windows, and somewhere in that apartment, two 16-year-old twin boys, nonverbal, autistic, completely dependent on the people around them to survive. One of them is already gone. The other is lying in a bed, malnourished, dehydrated, covered in bed sores, unable to move because he hasn't been able to walk in who knows how long. And the people charged with taking care of them? His own mother, his own grandmother. Make it make sense. Because right now, neighbors are asking how nobody saw this coming. Welcome to Crime and Love, where love meets crime. Every story has two sides. The super of the building is saying he knew something was wrong, and the city's own child services agency is saying, quote, they don't even have a file on this family. So how does a child starve to death in an apartment in a building full of people and nobody steps in? Let's get into it. Geneva Jarvis is 36. Her mother, Denise Jarvis, is 62. Together they were raising, or supposed to be raising, Geneva's twin sons, Adonis and his brother. Both boys were nonverbal. Both were on the autism spectrum, which means both of them depended completely on the adults around them for basic things. Food, water, being turned over in bed so they didn't develop sores, being taken to a doctor when something was wrong. Neighbors on East 147th Street said the family kept to themselves, doors closed, no noise, nothing that screamed emergency from the outside. One neighbor said her daughter, who's special needs herself, used to ride the same school bus as the twins. She remembers seeing them get taller over time, growing, normal kid stuff as far as she could tell. They were growing, she said. I said, oh, they getting bigger. That's it. That's all she saw. But here's the thing. Somewhere along the way, the boys stopped going to school. Nobody's entirely sure when. The Department of Education won't confirm specifics, and Administration for Children's Services, the agency that's supposed to be the safety net for kids like this, says they don't have an open file on this family at all. So while the outside world saw two boys getting taller, growing up, inside that apartment, something else was happening entirely. Anyways, let's talk about what the building super saw, because he's the one who says he tried to get in. He told reporters the apartment was filthy, uninhabitable. He said he asked, more than once, to get inside and fix things up. And every time, Geneva told him the same thing. Tomorrow. She never let him in. Period. That's the environment these two boys were living in. Two teenage boys who couldn't speak for themselves, couldn't call for help, couldn't tell anybody what was happening to them, locked away behind a door that never opened. So let's talk about what prosecutors say was actually happening behind that door. According to the case against them, this wasn't sudden. This wasn't a few bad weeks. Prosecutors allege that since at least January, the twins were kept in separate rooms, not bedrooms in the way you're picturing, rooms they didn't leave, rooms covered in flies, rooms covered in their own waste. Let that sit for a second. Two teenage boys, couldn't speak up, couldn't leave, couldn't tell a soul what was happening to them. Court documents say both boys used to be able to walk, past tense. Somewhere along the way, that stopped. Prosecutors say they were left lying in the same position for months at a time. Months. No movement, no repositioning, which is exactly how you end up with the kind of bed sores investigators later found on both of them. Girl, months. And this is where it gets even harder to sit with, because somebody in that apartment knew. Somebody watched two boys go from walking to bed-bound to covered in sores to starving. And nothing changed. No call for help, no trip to a hospital, no cry for outside intervention. Just a closed door and 2 boys getting worse by the day. So what actually broke this open? What made March the month everything came crashing down? March, the day it all came to a head. Geneva later told police and doctors that she'd been in the process of feeding Adonis's brother when she realized something was wrong with Adonis. He wasn't breathing. A neighbor said Geneva came outside to wait for the ambulance. When paramedics arrived, they asked her the obvious question: "Where's the patient?" Her answer: "He's outside, in the hallway." Think about that for a second. A 16-year-old boy, dying, and he's not even inside the apartment when help shows up. He's in the hallway. The neighbor who witnessed this asked her directly, "You didn't keep him inside the apartment?" No answer worth repeating. Paramedics rushed Adonis to the hospital. It was too late. Witnesses who saw him that day said he looked like a skeleton. Sources close to the case say he weighed around 60 pounds. 16 years old, 60 pounds, covered in sores. He didn't make it. But here's where this case takes another turn, because Adonis wasn't the only twin in that apartment. When police responded to the scene, they went inside and found his brother in bed. Same apartment, same conditions, severely malnourished, dehydrated, covered in bed sores of his own. He was alive, barely, but alive. 2 boys, same face basically. They were identical twins. One didn't survive the neglect, the other did just barely, and only because officers found him in time. An autopsy later confirmed what everyone watching that scene already suspected. Adonis died of starvation. Not an accident, not a sudden illness. Starvation, the kind that takes weeks and months to kill somebody, which means it was visible if anybody had been looking. I said what I said. Neighbors described the smell coming from that apartment once the door was finally open for the world to see. Piled trash, soiled mattresses, flies swarming through the space like it was nobody's home at all. This was where 2 boys who couldn't speak for themselves were left to survive, or not survive, completely at the mercy of the 2 adults who were supposed to protect them. Moving on to what happened once police and prosecutors got involved. Because the arrests came fast. The explanations? Not so much. Once Adonis was pronounced dead, and his brother was found in that condition, this stopped being a family tragedy in the eyes of the law. It became a homicide investigation. The medical examiner's ruling made that official. Long-term neglect, starvation, a homicide, not a natural death, not an accident. Detectives didn't have to dig far for evidence. The apartment itself told the story. The smell, the flies, the trash, the state both boys were found in. But they still needed to establish who was responsible and how long this had been going on. That's where the timeline prosecutors built comes in. At least since January, months of documented decline according to the case against Geneva and Denise. Months where either one of them could have picked up a phone, walked to a hospital, called anybody. Neither did. And this is where the questions start pointing outward too. Not just at the 2 women in that apartment, but at the systems that were supposed to be watching. Because here's the thing. Nobody's entirely sure when these boys were last enrolled in school. Neighbors say they used to go. At some point, that stopped, and it's still unclear exactly when or why nobody flagged it. The Administration for Children's Services, the agency whose entire job is protecting kids in situations like this, says they don't have an open file on this family. No prior involvement, no red flag in their system. Make it make sense. 2 nonverbal autistic twins, no longer in school, living in conditions a building super called uninhabitable, and the city's child protection agency has nothing on record. This is bigger than just this one apartment too. A separate city watchdog, the Department of Investigation, has been sounding the alarm on this exact problem. Their job is to review ACS's handling of cases after a child dies, to check for missed warning signs. But state law limits how much they're even allowed to see. Last year alone, according to that watchdog's own reporting, 18 children died after their families had some prior involvement with ACS. 18. And investigators were only able to fully review one of those cases. State law kept them locked out of the rest. There's a bill sitting on the governor's desk right now that would change that, give the watchdog real access to those files. But that's a fight for another day. Right now, 2 more names are added to a list that shouldn't exist in the first place.
More questions today after a mother and grandmother were charged in the death of their 16-year-old son and grandson. Could someone have intervened?
The teenager died in March, but his death was just ruled a homicide. The ME saying there was long-term neglect, including starvation. Alice Gaynor reports.
The Jarvis twins, pictured here with their mother in an older photo confirmed by a relative, were nonverbal and autistic, according to police. 16-year-old Adonis died after being rushed to the hospital in March. Police sources say Geneva Jarvis told police and doctors at the time that she had been feeding his brother when she realized Adonis was not breathing. Police then went to the home on East 147th Street near Brook Avenue and found the other twin in bed, malnourished and dehydrated with bed sores. The boy's mother, 36-year-old Geneva Jarvis, and grandmother, 62-year-old Denise Jarvis, were arrested and charged with murder. Both pleaded not guilty, with attorneys for Geneva noting she has no prior criminal history. The door to their third-floor apartment was open when our crew got there. They noted a strong odor coming from inside. Neighbors told us the boys used to go to school, but prosecutors allege since at least January, the boys remained in separate rooms covered in flies and their own feces. The defendants, they say, left these children to rot and starve, telling a judge they used to be able to walk, but became unable to, laying in the same position for months. We reached out to the Department of Education to ask about whether the twins were enrolled or not, among other questions. The DOE says it can't comment on specifics, but says New York City Public Schools made extensive efforts to engage and support the family. Quote, "The loss of this young person is heartbreaking, and we grieve this tremendous loss along with their community. Our thoughts remain with those grieving." One neighbor told us she hadn't seen the twins in some time, but didn't know anything was seriously wrong. The super, who did not want to show his face, said the same.
It was bad because, I mean, we should have seen it, but like they closed doors, they never came out, nothing. And it was quiet, no noise, no nothing.
A relative also spoke with us off camera. He says he's angry and claims he had no idea what was going on. He says the last time he saw the twins was in December.
In the Mott Haven section of the Bronx, Alice Gaynor, CBS News, New York.
New questions are emerging tonight about who exactly is looking out for the city's children after a Bronx mother and grandmother were charged in the death of a boy with autism. Tonight, we're working to confirm whether the family had any prior contact with the Administration for Children's Services, known as ACS. ACS says confidentiality laws prevent it from sharing that information, but the city's independent watchdog tells us the law is leaving serious gaps in oversight. Investigative reporter Masa Saidi has more.
Prosecutors say 16-year-old Adonis Jarvis died after suffering from malnutrition and dehydration. His surviving twin also found malnourished with bed sores. Tonight, the boy's mother and grandmother charged with murder. As investigators work to determine exactly what occurred inside this home, CBS News New York Investigates is examining what happens after a child dies. The Department of Investigation, or DOI, is the city's independent watchdog. Its job is to review ACS's work, looking for missed warning signs. Last year, DOI's then commissioner told me state law was standing in the way.
What we need to be able to do is take a hard, objective look at these situations when there is a child fatality, to look at the role that ACS played and to see whether it could have done something more or something better.
Fast forward to now, nothing's changed. In May, DOI released this report outlining 2 major problems. First, the agency says it often has to fight to get access to any ACS record. Second, in some cases, state law doesn't allow DOI to see the record at all, including cases ACS determined to be unfounded. The watchdog says the consequences are severe. Last year alone, ACS had prior involvement with the families of 18 children who later died. But DOI says the law stopped it from reviewing the full history in 17 of those cases. A bill now awaiting Governor Hochul's signature would expand DOI's access. In a statement, a spokesperson says DOI, quote, supports and has long supported passage of this legislation.
So, Maza, I know you're still waiting to hear back from the governor's office, but what would change specifically if she supports this bill?
So we spoke with one of the co-sponsors of this bill, and we're told that if this becomes law, it's going to give DOI direct access to files that it just cannot get its hands on right now. I also reached out to ACS to see if they support this bill. In a statement, they said in part, quote, ACS is committed to transparency and we strongly support the important oversight role of DOI, to which ACS provides in-depth information on a regular basis.
Geneva Jarvis, 36. Denise Jarvis, 62. Mother and grandmother. Both arrested, both charged with murder, both pleaded not guilty. Geneva's attorney was quick to point out she has no prior criminal history, no record, nothing that would have flagged her as a danger before this. In court, prosecutors laid it out plainly. The boys had once been able to walk, and somewhere along the way, that ability was taken from them through neglect, not illness. Left in the same position for months, left to develop the kind of sores that come from a body that's never moved, left without enough food to survive. The defendants, according to prosecutors, left these children to starve. That's the case against them. 2 women who were legally and morally responsible for 2 vulnerable boys, and instead, one of those boys is dead, and the other is lucky to be alive. The women are expected to continue facing the legal process moving forward. At the center of all this are 2 identical twin boys who never got a voice in their own story. They couldn't speak. They couldn't ask for help. They depended entirely on the adults around them, and those adults failed them in the worst way possible. Adonis didn't survive that failure. His brother did, barely, and only because someone finally opened that door. This case isn't just about 2 women behind closed doors. It's about a system that had no file, no flag, no warning for 2 kids who needed one.